the first order of business this morning is just appointing a chair for this meeting.
I move Newell chairs the meeting.
Is that seconded?
Graham.
Graham?
Okay.
Perfect. And all in favor?
Yeah, good enough.
All right.
I'll accept, yeah. Thank you very much. So I'll call the meeting to order. It's already called to order. We'll now start the meeting. And firstly, I would like to state that we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. We have an agenda in front of us. Can I have a motion to move adoption of the agenda? It's moved Morrison and seconded. Yes. Any additions? Anything anyone would like to offer? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. I can see the screen, so all in favor? We have an agenda. Receipt of the minutes. Is there anything anyone would like to change before they move to the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to delegations. There are no delegations for this commission meeting. So we'll move to staff reports, Nelson campus study, and over to Tricia. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I'm coming to you across the table from Craig and Creston, so it's distracting me because I can hear myself echo and I can hear myself in the boardroom. But I am just pulling up the report for you. So this is to provide a bit of an update on the Nelson campus study. So that project is not too far off from getting underway. And there was a couple of updates from the last time this report was brought forward, which was, I believe, in January. And so the project is slightly off schedule by approximately about a month, give or take. But generally speaking, that's not going to change our engagement strategy. We just wanted to keep you up to date. So in the middle of the report, you'll see a table that we've updated, and it's showing that in May, the Nelson and District Project Working Group, and just for everyone's reference, working group is somewhat synonymous with the concept of an advisory committee. Just if there's any question about that, there was some sensitivity around the language calling something an advisory committee. So all of our engagement projects have something called a working group, which is being established in May, and which will help lead the project going forward. And they ultimately will help set the project schedule. And then in June and July, the consultant will start to confirm the establishment of a task force, which will come back to that working group's decision on what the task force looks like, the level of importance of it, what its role is, so on and so forth. That will all happen in June and July. That group will also, in June and July, will also be establishing key timelines and meeting dates and finalizing and establishing our engagement tactics for this project. The actual engagement is not scheduled to occur until late August and then through into the first 2 months of the fall, with the project completion winding up in November. So we put a little bit of information about what the project working group is all about. So obviously they will work closely with staff to help guide the project through to successful completion. This group would be responsible for attending meetings, and the frequency of that, I would say, is yet to be totally determined, but there would be regular meetings, and I'm going to suggest maybe once a month, give or take, might be appropriate to help move that project along. Just for everyone's reference, in case people have forgotten, the project involves the review of the services and facilities owned and operated by both the regional district and the City of Nelson. So on this working group, we would also look to involve City of Nelson staff, and it would be up to them as to who would be most appropriate to join this group. So what we're trying to do today is ultimately establish participation from the Rec Commission on this working group, keep wanting to call it a committee, working group. And so the choice is really up to you. Obviously, the more people, it does add a bit of complexity. However, it does also provide a lot of different perspectives. So the recommendation is, at minimum, the area directors, as well as at least one City of Nelson council member who sits on the commission, would be appropriate, along with whomever comes from the City of Nelson. Or the option could be that all of commission participates in the working group, because that may be of importance to you. I can speak from a little bit of experience. We're just underway with the engagement in the Castlegarden District project. And certainly having all of the commission, which is what their choice was all of commission is involved in the project there. And I would say for the most part, it works well. I'd say the one complexity it adds is in relation to the coordination of meetings. We've really had to get that group to be encouraged to prioritize those meetings, because you can appreciate that when you're trying to coordinate upwards of 8 to 10 people's schedules, it gets very complicated. So the recommendation on the floor with this report, so obviously this was primarily an update, but is to help us identify what the commission's wishes are in relation to participation in the working group. And maybe I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So I see a question from Director Graham's, Commissioner Graham, so please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to Tricia. I have not been involved in a working group before, and I know this is early on in the whole thing, but I have 14 committees and commissions and groups that I'm working with, and so I have a lot. I work full-time also. I'm just trying to ascertain some idea of what might be involved with this working group. Like, I heard you say one meeting a month. So if I'm correct, I'm just, like I say, trying to get some idea here. If it's August to October, are we talking about 3 meetings? That's it?
There'd be one through the chair, there would be one here early on, so that we can start getting some strategies put together. So if we're establishing the working group in May, in order for us to have the consultants kind of move all of our engagement work forward, there would be a meeting here definitely before the summer, possibly 2. It kind of depends on how the conversation goes with the working group, to be honest. And then really in the summer, because we know it's not a good time to really do engagement, the goal is to get a lot of work, the foundation built in May and June, so that the consultants can continue to work with staff sort of throughout the summer. And then it would be more frequent, but that's also dependent on what the engagement strategy looks like. So I would say, yes, on the high side, well, probably I'd say on the low side, 3 is realistic. I don't think it would be many more, because really it's going to be, once the engagement process gets rolling, it could be your participation in, say if there's a community meeting, if that's part of the strategy, or if there's some other reason for you to participate even outside of the meetings, that would be sort of even separate from your role on the working group. But really the working group then is going to be reviewing information that's collected, helping to confirm the details of the final reports before they get advanced for approval or sort of endorsement into the next process, wherever the process leads us. So I think it's fair to say between May and the end of the project, 4 to 5 meetings.
Thank you, Tricia. And so through the chair, just are the ones you're working on, are they having virtual meetings? Are these meetings in person? What's the sort of structure that you've seen so far?
So through the chair in Castlegar, they've been in person with a virtual option. So we've had both, and I believe in the 3 meetings we've had, I don't think any time there's always been everyone in person. So I don't see any reason why a hybrid option would not be available. And maybe I'll leave it at that.
Supplemental, are you okay with that? Following up on that, good question there, Commissioner. I'll go to staff. Can we do some of this work as part of regularly scheduled Rec 5 meetings?
Through the chair, I would suggest, yes, that is possible. We did do that in Castlegar for the first 2 meetings. Again, the process there and I'll call it political sensitivity around the engagement project in Castlegar is different than it is in Nelson. So they found that it actually made the meetings quite long. But I would argue that for Nelson and district, it could be a very reasonable option.
As a supplemental through me, how would we decide that?
Through the chair, I would suggest that recognizing that, say, if all of commission is interested in participating as part of the working group, I would say at least for this early part of, say, before summer, we could absolutely tie them to commission meetings. You're already scheduled to be at these meetings. It just might be that depending on the level of content in the commission meeting, it might just determine how long the meeting needs to be scheduled for on that day. I can't necessarily forecast what that could look like, but I personally don't see any concern with trying to coordinate it at times when people are already scheduled to be somewhere.
Well, I think we should put it as an agenda item on whenever you're ready, like the May meeting or June meeting. If people are okay with that, at least gets the ball rolling when we're all there, and then see where we go. So supplemental to the supplemental through the chair, there's community engagement to occur. Well, first of all, are people seeing me? Like, I can't see me up there when I'm talking, and usually,
You're the-
oh yeah, there we are, okay. Okay, got it, okay. I got a haircut there a couple of days ago. Way in the back. Finishing his thought that could be lost, community engagement. So the first meeting wouldn't be like community engagement, it'd be commission engagement with staff.
And the consultant.
And consultant. So we're okay there, get the ball rolling and then see what we want to do. So my supplemental to that supplemental is maybe the city themselves could decide from their 3 representatives, do they want all of them to come? Like, I don't see a problem with everyone there, or maybe they could delegate 1 person, but everyone shows up or something like that. So that's just a thought. Is there a process for selecting community members in that August to October section through the chair to staff?
And through the chair, are you thinking of the task force, or are you thinking of selection of the public in relation to say like user group engagement specifically?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I was kind of asking that, and then David here said like under working group, project working group would be maybe. Go ahead, David.
I have a question, Tricia. With regards to the facilities from the regional district and the city of Nelson, there are facilities that aren't within the campus as it's set up currently, which is Selkirk College. They have facilities that wouldn't fall under this criteria, as well as some independent groups that don't reach out for granting or support, which would be the Boxing Association, which operates out of Baker Street, as well as the Tennis Association, which works within the school district 8. So if we're trying to get a view from 100,000 feet, then we should be incorporating them at some point in time. I did talk to Jeannie at Selkirk College, and she said no one's ever engaged them with regards to our facilities and what we do in our community. But if we're going to be looking at spending dollars, tax dollars, on expanding the campus based on this information, we should be looking at all the facilities, and we should be engaging Selkirk College, the climbing group, the tennis groups, any other independents, whether it's paddlers. I know Joe's shaking his head here.
Okay, well, David, first of all, just by way of background, didn't introduce you, David. So David, thanks for here, community member, part of our commission in the sense of sitting in, has voice at the table. Joe,
Yeah, no, the scope of this project was always specifically about the campus facilities. Are those groups, are they part of the consultation? Yes.
Yes,
They are not part of the task force or those kinds of
but
things.
what about including them so that they do have dialogue? Because some of these are experts.
That's part of the consultation piece.
so community engagement to occur.
Yeah.
That's where it fits in for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So that voice will be heard. Thanks, David. Thanks, Joe. We're here. Trish, anything else you want to say? I don't see Cheryl, could you put your hand? Did you have another comment? Cheryl? Yes, please go ahead. Sorry. Wasn't sure.
Thank you. So through the chair, I had a similar question. And my question was basically, would we be looking for any community members to join the working group? As you mentioned, it's similar to a community advisory committee. And in that process, what happens is a director puts a name forward, and then the board approves that person for the community advisory committee. So I was wondering if this would be the same or similar project. If we were looking for other members of the task force from the public, would a director put that name forward? Is there a process for that?
Yes, go ahead.
So through the chair, in the short answer, Director Graham, is no, they would not form part of the working group. And I'll go back, and I'm going to use language that might be more specific. So an advisory committee typically doesn't involve the public in this particular project, even though we're not calling it an advisory committee. In the working group, it would be staff, the politicians, and certainly in this case, it's going to be representatives from the city of Nelson, and of course, the politicians are already represented through the commission. If the working group decides to have a task force, which I can tell you in Castlegar, we originally had as part of our project, and the working group decided against it. They didn't want to have a task force for this particular project for good reason in Castlegar. In this project, that group may say, yes, we want a task force, and then that working group will establish how they want to go about putting people into that role or soliciting the right people that we think would be helpful for the project after that working group really gets rolling. And that's probably where even groups like that have been talked about right now that are not necessarily in facilities that are part of the scope of the project, but how those other parties could become involved, or they could be involved through the engagement, whether it's surveys, user group meetings, sport group meetings. There could be any number of things. And that's when we talk about establishing the tactics of the actual engagement, is where the rubber really hits the road as to how we go about that based on the scope of the project.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we have another question here. Go ahead, Commissioner Morrison.
Sorry, just so that Trish knows, Dave, she just referred to him as a director, so, but you're not, but he isn't, so.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, sorry,
I must have zoned out or something.
I'm a little bit late to the game here, and my apologies to that commission for my lack of attendance. But the role of mayor sometimes conflicts with the rest of my life. So I just want to clearly understand that when we're talking about this working group, we're basically looking at the people that are already sitting at this table. Who's being added in besides the consultant?
Through the chair, there would be city.
Yes, go ahead, please, Trish. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Through the chair, there would be certainly City of Nelson staff. They own and they own many of the facilities on that campus study. So that group would be involved in whichever people they think are most appropriate to join our working group.
Okay, so that, we kind of have those conversations all the time. I mean, I've been on this rec commission on and off for way too many years. I guess that's part of the problem. So, but it's basically, so my question would be, or my request would be, because we don't have all of the we're missing one of our commissioners here. I think that three of us need to have an opportunity to have a chin wag, is that if we are looking at adding these to meetings, I would ask that this item be at the end of the agenda, and if the decision is made that City of Nelson only wants to have one commissioner at the table, that the other commissioners can, of course, fully participate in the commission meetings, and then be able to recuse. And so I think that my only request would be is that this item be put as the last item on the agenda, so that the meeting can actually end, and then the working group meeting could start.
That's a good point, and in fact, we could adjourn, because it isn't a commission meeting, we can adjourn the meeting and then immediately commence the consult, whatever this other thing is going to actually be called, an engagement meeting. Something like that.
I like working group.
Engagement working group thing. Okay, so anything else? I don't see any other hands up. Any closing comments? Trish?
No, and I just to speak to Commissioner Morrison's comment, that's exactly how we managed it in Castlegar. The commission meeting ended and then the working group meeting started. It wasn't a public meeting. It was, and then the people who were part of that, or some people that joined in that weren't part of our commission meeting, so for example, the consultant, simply came on at that time.
Thank you. Joe, go ahead, please.
Through the chair, Trish, do you want to have, before the main meeting, just have the city to be able to identify the staff and who will sit on the working group? If that's the case, then the commission could just ask staff to send a letter to the City of Nelson to who they would like to be their representatives on the working group. Because I'm just hearing.
No, that's fine, you can,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm just gonna butt in.
Yes, please butt in through the chair.
Yeah, so through the chair, yeah, you can send a letter, but now that I've sat here and there's this requirement, and I obviously know the first potential date of the meeting, I will talk with senior management as to who they want to delegate within the staff resources to participate in this program. And I will let them know that the timeline looks to be 5 months.
Perfect, and through the chair, just to Jens, so like in Castlegar, just so you're aware, and like, and this isn't, it's more, you could have more than one staff representative.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so this item is good. Do you want a letter from staff, Trish?
Well, I mean, I think, sorry, through the chair, I think send the letter, but I'm gonna go and get this dealt with now. I mean, you know, then it's in the archives, and when somebody says that the meeting didn't happen or the request didn't go through, it will be archived the next 100 years, you know, both the RDCK files and the City of Nelson. It won't have been a, you know, fireside chat, and that somebody's trying to recall 100 years later.
Yeah, through the chair, we've had lots of those conversations, of those things in the past.
Yeah.
The reason for me bringing up the letter, just,
Yeah,
was just to make sure that we had that discussion about when we might, so that we can have that working group meeting.
yeah, no, that's
So
excellent.
I'm fine with whatever way commission, if it's,
Do you need a motion? No, direction to staff. Go ahead. It's done.
okay.
I hope everyone's okay with the chair's unilateral decision of saying it's a direction to Joe and his staff to get the letter out to the city. So with that in mind, and Trish saying that's it, we'll move on to Ryan and quarterly report.
Through the chair, Ryan, facility manager, is ill today. I will fill in for him.
Take it away.
And this is an operations report. Thanks, Chair. This is an operations report for the first quarter of 2024, and there's a little bit of forward-looking information, but I'll just start with the Civic Center Arena operations. The season ended on March 17th, and we had a successful season operating with NDCC staff. We had no contractor this year. We are still going through the actual costs, and we'll come to the commission with a report on actual costs for staffing, electricity, utilities, etc. We'll also work with City of Nelson staff on some potential equipment issues, including the Zamboni that the city owns. The Zamboni, we'll have to have a conversation with them about how that can be effectively administered. And we'll also work with the City of Nelson staff to determine that they want to do some repairs to the roof at the Civic Arena, and in conjunction with the other repairs they're doing at the Civic Center. And they need ice in to be able to put a lift on the floor of the arena. So we'll probably have to put ice in maybe a week or two early, or we'll have to have some time during the hockey season where people can't be using the ice while they're repairing the roof, but we'll work with them. And then the other conversation that's happening with the feasibility study for filming in Nelson, and that will be also something that staff work with the city on. Good news with
Can I pause you for a moment?
Yeah, you bet, Chair.
I see a hand up, so go ahead, Commissioner Tate.
Hi, thanks for that. Let's see if I can lower my hand. Not that smart. Is there a Zamboni left over from the Pioneer? Like, is that all RDCK, and is that something to consider with the Pioneer closing, that there might be some resources there that could be shared regionally?
Through the chair, great question. Yes, staff have considered how we decommission the Pioneer. I would say that the RDCK does own that piece of equipment, and through our disposition policy, we will apply that at the proper time. Whether that Zamboni works for the Civic Arena or not, I think the Civic Arena has a side dump, a very small side dump, and that's appropriate or best use for there. But that is something that we could consider going forward as far as an opportunity.
Thank you. All right, onward.
Thanks, Chair. And I was going to say good news with some of the training initiatives that we started in 2023, kind of mid-season, with the subsidized and even in some cases free training for aquatics and even now in fitness. We are starting to see benefits, and we are moving into a workforce that is not only there's more of them, but they're more available. And so we did just this week expand the hours of operation at the aquatic center. We're not quite back to 2019, but we're getting closer, much closer to 2019 hours of operation. So that's really good news for us, and that's sustainable for the rest of the year. And we have budgeted for that. So that's a very positive improvement to the service delivery. We are closing the facility tomorrow for all staff training, for a full day of staff training. And we did that in Castlegar on Monday. We're doing it today in Creston. And we deliberately closed the NDCC tomorrow so that all of the staff can get some local government training and recreation and training all in one group. And so we had a very successful session on Monday in Castlegar. Tricia was part of that with Tia Whaling, and the team in Castlegar. We're doing it in Creston, so we're doing that tomorrow in Nelson. So that has been promoted, and there are some people that may not have heard that message, so there may be some people confused, but we have, and I believe Joe's answered a few emails about patrons that have asked for extension to their passes because of the loss of the day, but during these types of closures, they can utilize the facility in Castlegar if they so wish. A little bit of project update. The air handler that we ordered in 2022 showed up unannounced and is sitting in storage around the facility right now. So that we're preparing to install that, and we are then looking at procuring 2 more air handlers. We don't think it's going to take that long this time. The world supply chain is getting a little bit better, so we do plan to have 2 other air handlers installed this year. And then the pool boiler replacement project. It's not on a stall. We were trying to find the best time to shut down for 3 to 5 days, and the contractor has been able to do some ducting work and preliminary work, but we are hoping that they give us enough notice, that we can promote to or communicate to the public that we will have to close the facility for 3 days. our goal now is, it was Easter, and now our goal is going to be before the May long weekend. And so we'll make sure that when we're going to do that project, the public are given plenty of notice on that. And I'll take any questions.
Kate, go ahead. Director Tate, please go ahead, and Graham. So
Thank you. Through the chair, how are we looking for Gyro Park staffing this summer?
Through the chair, that's a good question. From what I've been told, Gyro Park will have no limitations. It's a little bit early in the seasonal hiring cycle right now, but we don't anticipate there being any gaps in Gyro this year.
excellent. Director Graham, Director Morrison, and then Dave. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a question on your staffing table that's in the report. I'm just wondering, in the 2024 April, like, what does the number in brackets mean?
Sorry, Chair, I'm just pulling that up.
Yeah, take your time.
Oh, I flipped to the wrong report. So the number, yeah, so the 4 and 1. I'll get back to you on that one. It was something related to the fact that one was, I think it had related to their full-time status potentially, but I will, and I apologize, I can't answer that question for you today.
Okay. And Director Morrison, Commissioner Morrison.
Through the chair, my question is around the communications of closures. And I realize that this is a, RDCK requirement to put out the information, but do you ever share that information with the city of Nelson, so with our communications officer, so that we can post closures also on our webpage? Because I really don't think that there's probably anything posted on the city of Nelson site to say that the RDCK is closing for educational, it's like, I don't think people mind that it has to close, but I think that as a resident of Nelson, I can tell you, I do not look on the RDCK site for information because I don't distinguish that this big building in the middle of my downtown is the property of an external non-city agency. So I think sharing that kind of communication so it gets the broad sweep, because my guess would be is a majority of people might actually be citizens of Nelson that are concerned about the closure, because all of those people who live in the regional district probably have the RDCK webpage loaded to see all the updates and notices. So if that could be accommodated, Ginger Lester is our operational coordinator, so you don't have to go looking for the person, but if you could just maybe send that sidebar thing to say, we're closing, would you mind maybe posting a notice also on the city webpage?
Good suggestion. Craig?
Yeah, through the chair, and Trish and I are literally across the table from each other, and I'm asking her the answer to this question. No, it's a very, and as a suggestion, a recommendation from Mayor Morrison, absolutely, for these types of planned closures, we will look into how our communications can liaise with city liaison or communications and make sure that we get this out. Because you're right, if you're not a friend of the RDCK on Facebook, you don't get that Facebook blast, and if you're not on our email subscription, you don't get that email blast either. So we will look at how we can improve our communications.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks. Great suggestion. David.
Through the chair, Craig, I've got a supplemental to Mayor Morrison's and a supplemental on your operating cost side of things. In the civic operations piece, you said you were working on the numbers for what it costs to run the ice surface, et cetera. Is that something that is going to be done in conjunction with the entire facility or just the ice surface?
No, through the chair, we only oversee the Nelson Civic Arena. we don't look at the Civic Center in totality. And so for us, we do get information from the city staff, from finance on what it costs for them to operate the Civic Arena. And then we estimate as best we can with the data what it costs for us for power, through our refrigeration plant and staffing. Now that we don't have a contractor, we can track the staffing's a little bit less concise, so we have to bit of a debrief and crunch the data on that. But no, we specifically will report back to this commission on what it costs to operate the Nelson Civic Arena.
Thank you. And then my supplemental to Mayor Morrison's on the communication side. With the closure in May, you're talking the May long weekend, which is right at the end of May. Two of your user groups are moving into their provincial and national qualifications in the Aquatic Center in those timelines, one of them being the Nelson Reflections. Do you engage them as far as the timelines for when they are going to be in dire need of a swimming facility to ensure their practices are available?
Yeah, through the chair, this was the more this goes into the spring, the harder things get. And shoehorning this in, this project in three days with 1 day on each side to 5 days sounds good on paper. But we have let the user groups know that this project is happening, but we had at this point anticipated having it done. So the contingency is that if it is very disruptive and 3 days leads to 5, leads to 7, then we would proactively delay the project to ensure that the best use of the facilities was realized.
So
Go ahead, yes, Dave.
On a follow-up to that then, as of June the 15th, the temperature in Kootenay Lake is, susceptible to swimming. Prior to that, it's a glacier-fed lake, but would it not make sense to postpone it into June if it is going to be multiple days? Because both aquatic sports that do go into provincials and nationals take place in the first week of July. So running into the end of June for the closure might impact them both. So if it would make sense to push it down the road another 45 days to not impact any of them.
Through the chair, yeah, the best time to do it is, there's a lot that comes into it, and certainly communication with the user groups and the public users and our programming is part of it. But the other opportunity is to push it to the pool shutdown in the fall, late summer, and the only risk there is that there would be cost escalations from the contractor. So we're also trying to balance that. But we'll find the best time to do it. We'll have a communication with the engineer and the contractors, and we'll promote that and fit it at the best time.
Thanks. Then my last question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
With regards to staffing, I did get some feedback from one of our user groups who rented the facility for a swim meet on April 6th and 7th. We had 97 swimmers visit our community, which is double from what we did last year and double from the year before. So we're moving in the right direction. But on the staffing side of things, we did incur a little bit of a hiccup from the facilities. There was no lifeguard scheduled for warm-ups at 7 o'clock in the morning of April the 7th, which was part of the contract. And we're just wondering how that's communicated to the facilities so that it doesn't happen in future.
Staff,
Staff.
any response?
Yeah, through the chair, I think that, and thanks for letting me know. I think that if that's in the facility booking and there's a gap in staffing, then the facility manager would have dealt with that. I'll circle back to him. But typically when a group gives us their
For some reason, Craig just froze.
Well, at least he didn't freeze on his mouth open.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Craig's just gonna head to his office and log in from there. Just give him 2 minutes.
Yeah. We'll just put our feet up, relax. Used to say, have a smoke.
I know I'm getting a low bandwidth warning.
Okay. We'll wait for Craig, but most of the answer was there. He'll talk to staff.
So Joe, is the idea here of the owl will be used for regional district name meetings? Is this now the setup for regular board meetings?
Yeah, sorry, this is the regular setup for board meeting. They haven't, for a board meeting, we haven't used Zoom yet. So they're still using WebEx, and I don't know that there's a plan change. This is one of the experiments.
This is our first meeting, but I was just told today that any meeting going forward, we're gonna be switching over, so.
Oh, really? Just keep rolling into Zoom.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, I lost, my computer went dead. Sorry. So can I pick it back up where I was?
Yeah, please do, Craig.
Thanks, Chair. So, so with the booking, the groups would normally tell us what their plan is and we put it on paper and then all the staff are scheduled according to that. And if we miss, then, our apologies, hopefully we sent our apologies to the group, but that does happen from time to time, but we try to minimize that. It isn't because there's no staff, we don't have enough staff. It was obviously a scheduling issue.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Okay, well, I'll turn it back to you, Craig, to wrap up when you feel comfortable, and then we'll move on. So back to you.
If there's any other questions, Chair.
Okay, I see none.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, wait. Okay.
Sorry about.
Yes, and Director Graham. Yeah, I see that. So we have two more questions, Craig. So go ahead, Director Morrison.
I see that there was, benefits of reduced cost for the lifeguard program, or in some cases, no cost at all. Are we continuing to look at, offering these programs at a reduced cost or no cost?
Craig,
Through
did you get that?
Yeah, through the chair, the subsidized training program is continuing for the time being. We do not want to lose momentum. We have budgeted for this. And we want to make sure that our training routine continues as long as we need it. But getting to a critical mass of staff is a good indication of progress, where we'll start to analyze the data and the numbers and make adjustments accordingly in the future.
Thank you. Supplemental, or are you good with that? Okay, Director Graham, please go ahead.
Thank you. So through the chair to Craig, just a suggestion here would be that you reach out to Dan Elliott in communications and you have him put a press release out today that the center will be closed tomorrow. Because he did put one out, like the Balfour transfer station's getting paved and that commute tomorrow. So that communication just went out, and those people do look for those. So I would just say that would be a helpful piece of communication.
Thanks, Chair. Tricia, I'm not sure if we put out a media release last week, but we did something proactively last week with all of our facilities. I'm not sure if it was a full media release, but thanks, Director Graham.
Through the chair to Trish, that was a media release that went out last week. I know that we've done email blasts, and I think what's really different about the complex is also, remember, that we actually have a direct line of communication with with the majority of our patrons.
Oh, right. Through.
So-
Yes,
so
supplemental, go ahead.
Thank
please.
you. So supplemental, because there was a press release that went out about the new pool hours, but it did
Okay.
not include the closure for the Nelson or any of the centers. Maybe that would have been a good place to put it, but it's kind of too late now. But I would still suggest you try to get that out if you can.
Thanks, Director Graham.
Great, thank you. And on this agenda item, Dave, please go ahead.
On your social considerations, piece 3.4, I know you didn't write this, but increased hours of operation for NDC, the aquatic facilities increase for recreation patterns. I did get an email directed to me on policy follow-up on how the allocation piece is working from two of the aquatic groups. I'm sorry that it's aquatics is what I focus on, but it's what I know best, and I am working on garnering more contacts within the other facilities so that I can give you their feedback as well. Both, again, two of the operating user groups in your facility have been impacted financially directly with losing pool space in both May and June. To one of them, they have lost 4 of their 9 swimmers because they can't get into the pool. which is gonna impact them in September when they start up again. And then again, the Kootenai Swim Club had to reduce its programs in order to accommodate the lack of pool space. So I'm just wondering if the policy would be under review at that point in time, because it is impacting, as far as the allocation of pool space is concerned, to two of our national and provincial teams, and how they access pool to train.
Through the chair, I'll tell a bit of a story and create a narrative. So we had a really good conversation with the Castlegar and the Nelson aquatic user groups in the fall. And we spoke about how we intend to use the pools in the future and how allocation will be applied. And we talked with them about having really good communication on what suits their models, their operating models, and how we deliver services and how they deliver services, and how we can make sure that we're not we're not swimming in each other's lanes, to use a pun. And that was a really good conversation. And then we followed that up with another meeting with the same group, maybe a few different people, but the same groups a couple of months ago. And we had a very productive meeting about allocation. And in fact, with the NDCC pool, where the majority of the conflicts are, there was a really good conversation where Ryan led with Christine scheduling a really good facilitated meeting on how we can share and work through conflicts in a collaborative way. And I thought that conversation was very productive, and that everyone understood how we were allocating the pool for this season, and that yes, the feedback they've been giving us since we've implemented the allocation policy will be informing future procedures. So there is a lot of good relationship building happening. There's a lot of progress being made. We are catching up to how they do business, and they're learning how we do business, and we're learning how we can do business together. So the unfortunate piece is that until recently, we didn't have full capacity in the aquatic facility. And I think the statement in the report speaks to the fact that we're moving in that direction.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks. All righty. So with that in mind, we'll move on to agenda item 6.3. And I guess that says Joe. So go ahead, Joe.
I think through the chair, the good news is that user fees are trending higher than what we projected for the budget again. And so this is the one service where we seem to be seeing that on a consistent basis. We need to understand our usership. Many times it seems that we focus on only one part of our delivery system, but the primary delivery system is the individual users, and that system is doing really well here. As Craig had said, we still have, what you're going to see is that we have an increasing aquatic operation. So our aquatic expenses, Craig, and just correct me if I'm wrong, our aquatic expenses right now are a little bit suppressed because we haven't been at full capacity.
Correct.
So those things will start to increase. So right now, the relationship is, despite the fact that we have that lack of total overall service, we were still seeing a rise in usership. So those things leads to very good results because you have less expense and more revenue. So we don't know if the addition of additional aquatic hours, so it'll be interesting just to somewhat try to monitor that and see if the addition of that has another spike. Our thoughts right now is that it won't actually cause a tremendous increase to that usership already. That usership will probably stay smooth, they'll just have more access to more hours. So we'll see how that plays out. Craig, I don't know if there's any operating expenses that you wanted to particularly identify.
Through the chair, and just to Joe's point, the 19% salaries to date that is impacted by, or the cause of that is the fact that aquatics is a little bit understaffed. But remember that the NDCC with camps, we spend $100,000 a year on camps and PRC, so the paddle rental center. So our summer season actually has a bigger percentage of the year than the first quarter, and so we should see that balance as well with Gyro Park. But the one I did want to point out that, and I'm not sure the cause of this, but the federal government has, I'm being a little bit cheeky, the federal government has provided us $56,000 in funding for summer students. And so that's more than we've gotten in years past, significantly more, meaning last year I think we got maybe $5,000. And even in Creston, I think I heard that we had been awarded $28,000. So there's to those numbers for the staff that I just talked about for the summer, there's a big offset also coming from the federal government and summer grants. But I think we're trending pretty good for all expenses, especially getting through the first part of the year where there's the most hockey use. Utilities are right on par with budget. So I think it's a overall financial picture with revenue up and user fees and operations expenses being kept below the quarter mark, 25% year to date. I think we're doing really well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Director Graham, please go ahead.
Thank you. So through the chair, Craig, can you please remind me what this $1 million of prior year surplus was from?
Through the chair, at least half, if not more, is from the capital projects. There was boilers that we carried forward this year, and there was some operating surplus in there.
I just was writing it down, so just to clarify, so it's a surplus that will be spent this year, like the project part will show as being spent this year, correct, Craig?
Correct. We carried that, a portion of that surplus, more than half of it, forward for capital projects.
Thank you. Supplemental, go ahead, Joe, and then a supplemental.
Well, through the chair, Janice.
Okay, go ahead. Supplemental, Director Graham?
Thank you. That's good. Could we, like, at some point, Craig, could we get a little more details on why so much operating surplus? Like, when I'm looking at the last budget that I had, we had a prior year surplus of like 586, and I don't have any notes. So it's, I guess, I try to keep track and I try to make notes on what this stuff is. So maybe if you can at some point, that would be helpful.
Yeah, through the chair, I think the budget report, and I know the last meeting we had with this commission was 2 months ago, but the budget report that Joe had drafted with the options, I think that detail is in there as far as where the operating surplus came from for this year. But yeah, that's where I'd look for that.
Okay. Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Morrison.
Sorry, and maybe I'm just being a little bit picky, but I get a bit concerned about language when I hear that part of the $1 million surplus was for capital projects, because I don't consider a capital project that gets pushed into the next fiscal year as a surplus. It was like,
It's allocated.
yeah, the language there is a bit, because I don't call that $1 million surplus. That was a program, that was money that should have been spent on a capital project. For whatever reason, the capital project can't get done until the next year. I mean, that's capital expenditure. So maybe there was $500,000 in surplus, and like surplus, comes in because of investment income or because your user fees are up, or, surplus doesn't just occur because of some mystic pen to paper exercise necessarily. So I'm just a cautionary tale on language, because when people, hear that, you know, what we often get is, you have $1 million surplus, why did you put up
Yeah.
the fees? And so the fact that half of that surplus was just from a project that never got initiated or finished being completed is, it's a little misinformed in my mind. So if I could just ask that we can contemplate the language that we're using when describing that. And then, because I think it also makes it hard to figure out where it came from, because now you've mixed capital and operating to claim a surplus. Those are two distinct things. Operating capital should not be in the same sentence, in my mind. Just,
Yeah.
you know,
And through the chair.
Let Joe make a comment.
Yeah, but through the chair, I mean, I agree, it's the, in a regional district budgeting system, we don't have separate capital and operating budgets, and so that, you're absolutely correct. You know, the only thing I can ever think of is that they do another account line where it is capital carryover. But that's not my decision to make, because it is very confusing. So last year, if I can remember the summary of the year-end budget. So the surplus is much the same as the explanation, a little bit of the explanation for the first quarter. And that was, again, that in particular, individual user fees was significantly higher than what we had projected. And the suppression of expense, because we weren't open, so we're stuffing more people in less time. So those two pieces are definitely combined for part of that surplus. And then the other piece, as Craig stated, was capital. Another area that we're still a little having some discussions with finance about is how we're accounting for utilities. It seems that there was a possible change in process from years past to this year, which we think undervalued the actual expense of utilities in 2023 and may possibly overvalue them in 2024. But we're working through those things with them.
So it's a good point. We don't have the system to separate those out right now, and it's noted for sure, so that's a really good point. Is there a supplemental?
no, just my supplemental would be is that if we don't have the capacity to do that, is that if one could have a discussion with the CFO now about how we can do that, because I think that gets messy. I could only imagine trying to wade through the city budget process if I had capital and operating mixed into together. And I think that the only other comment I have to that is when you can't separate that out, that becomes looking at your asset management becomes very challenging, because you can't see the forest for the trees in that kind of process of looking at it. But
Through the chair, I agree completely. You know, this conversation is not just around this table. You know, it's around the Castlegar table in particular, which has had, you know, even in Creston has had tremendous capital expenditures and will have again this year. And it's actually, it's difficult on many different levels having it that way.
Thank you. We'll move on from that. Thanks for raising that. Thanks, Joe, for your answer. Kate, please go ahead.
I was like, don't go. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Through the chair. I've heard a lot of times since I've been sitting at this table that we don't really know our users, and we don't necessarily know, and it's because of our billing system and our ticketing system, and we're trying to smooth that over. But I had a curiosity about just really simply trying to collect where these user fees in a self-reporting way where the folks are going. And I think it could be possibly as simple as like an iPad on the way out that says, where did you visit today? And it's like hot tub, steam room, gym, that kind of a thing, to try to capture what, because I know you're always often saying single users are going up. And so it'd be interesting to know if the people are going up only in the gym or whatever. And anecdotally, it's hard to track that, except for, I know in the pool, they count the number of people every hour. And I don't think they do that in the gym, but I just have a curiosity about trying to move forward on understanding the users.
And through
What do
the
you think?
staff have a response?
Through to Trish, is there anything on that you can add some flavor to?
Through to Commissioner Commissioner Tate, sorry about that. I totally hear what you're saying. I don't know that I have a good answer for you today. What I'm hearing is something separate from, so like a separate system from, say, what we already have, so there's a bunch of complexities related to it. It's something we could look into. I don't know that I have a good answer for you today. I think what we can say is we've heard what you've shared. We certainly have that same question. One of the things we're sampling, I shouldn't say samplings, we are doing it in the parks and water access strategy, is the use of a system, and I'm going to probably slaughter it a little bit, but a system to try to identify where users are coming from in a park system. So the Propulso, I think it's a software system, I'm not 100% sure, but it's a program that we're doing in partnership with the Trans-Canada Trail piece. And this is a whole piece of software that helps identify on a different level. So it almost wouldn't require someone to actually engage with us in some particular way, but apparently it can be used indoors too. We just don't have enough knowledge about how it works, what the reporting looks like at this point, and or what would be the most effective use or type of use to gain the information that we want. And so it's a whole animal unto itself that we need to dedicate some time and resources to investigate ways to garner that information. It's a challenging one, no doubt about it, especially in a multi-use space. And because we've got people doing multiple different things. We have rental groups, which we don't necessarily have any control over their usership versus our services that we're offering, say through general admission or our programs. And so each of those, and they're all interconnected to each other within these buildings. And so how to gain information that's kind of something we can learn from or build off of is challenging.
Yeah. Through the chair, I acknowledge the challenge. And I know as a user that it's complicated because sometimes you're going to Aquafit, which includes a bunch of stuff, but you've paid for this. And sometimes you're going to swim club, but you can also get into the hot tub. And so I know that is true. I have an idea, and it would likely not be simple to implement this year, but maybe if you could kind of just chuck it out to your group and socialize it about the idea of maybe getting a summer student to have a piece of paper at the front door for, I don't know, summer student, winter student, it would be different, but it would be interesting if we could try to collect some of that stuff. But I agree, it's really tricky to tease it out unless you have a complex system. But I also hear the frustration of trying to do planning when we don't know what each user fee is really going towards. And then we get stuck in this loop of, well, we don't really know what the seniors are doing, and we don't really know what the people that have month passes are doing, and so on. And so I just like to kind of start to socialize the idea that we can find out some things. So let's be curious about it and just see what we can do. And not today, but just as we move forward.
Yeah, through
Thanks.
Thank
yeah,
you.
you're welcome.
Thank you. That's great.
Sorry, through the chair. Sorry, I can't tell if I'm interrupting someone.
No, go ahead. Yeah, no, you're good.
Sorry, I'm delayed. The other, I mean, there is a project going on, to Commissioner Tate's comments. It's a very large data collection project that we're trying to mine information out of and collect information differently, or build reporting differently through our software system, which of course relies on people to input information correctly. You know, obviously it's only as good as the information that goes into it, but there is work being done on that. It doesn't totally do what you're talking about, where telling us where people necessarily say go within the building, but we're trying to even mine information that we already have. And that is definitely a priority for 2024 to see where we can get to. So there's a couple things that might run parallel that could magically intersect at some point too, just for your information.
All right, I'm gonna move along here, Dave, and then, we might be ready for adjournment. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, I want to applaud Mayor Morrison and Councillor Tate on the supplemental from Tate and the original question on getting operating versus capital separated, because that has been a contentious issue for many years around user groups trying to figure out why their fees are their fees and what does it cost to run each of the different parameters within the facility. So thank you very much for bringing that forward. On the staffing reporting that took place here during the meeting, I'm noticing that within the educational training piece, it says in the reporting that the training and development of the staff and employees is moving rapidly forward. But I see within your budget, you've only spent $731. So I'm not sure how that money is being allocated, because we've budgeted $26,000, but you've still got $25,409 remaining.
Go ahead, Craig, if you've got a response, or would you need to?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
through the chair, the answer to that question is in how we account for training now, and it isn't necessarily coming out of that account directly, and it doesn't come out of that account as soon as we do the training. It's also maybe because we haven't had a training course, but there, and maybe Joe could explain it really quick, but there we've reconfigured how we're doing regional training in 2024.
Quickly.
Yeah.
No disrespect, but it's an accounting thing is the answer, right? So we don't necessarily need to go into great detail right now. It'll catch up to it.
So what we do is, in the past, training used to be charged at our regular rate for trainings. This sounds like what we would charge an outside person to do it, we would charge an inside person to do it. We've consolidated where we account for training in an allocation service, so it's actually in E109. So that what is actually charged for training now, the majority of training, even if you were to look to last year, the actual training amount is actually lower than what it says in that line, is actually lower than what it said last year. And it's because it's accounted for and transferred to other services. So now what happens, if we're doing, I'm just going to use like aquatics, so this is the easiest one to understand. If we're doing MLS training and it happens to be held in Castlegar, the direct costs for operating that training are all captured in this other service. At the end of that training, if there were 5 people that are primarily working in Nelson, they're going to primarily work, and 5 people primarily that were going to work in Castlegar and two in Creston, the total cost of that training is just divided by that 12 and then allocated to those services. If there's an external person who isn't going to work for us, they pay the rate, they pay a fee to get in, that reduces that cost. So it's only the net costs that are transferred over. What we realized is that we were over accounting for the expense of that program by not just charging the actual cost of delivering. So we changed how we're accounting.
Thank you. Thanks. Good question. We've all learned something new today. Fantastic. So is there any other comments, additions? Dave, go ahead, please.
The final question I have for you on the action items, there used to be a long-standing list of action items that go all the way back to January of 2022. For whatever reason, it's very condensed to February 13th, 2024, but there were several action items that we're still waiting for status and dates, and they are no longer on there.
Commission went through, the chair commission went through a process of pulling those. So they did that. Jeez. I can't remember what meeting we did that at.
Yeah, and they were still there in February.
Describe.
So the piece, like, there's actually some action items that are on this one that can actually come off because they're actually complete.
Right. Combined scores.
Yeah, that was done last week.
So action items, they've been updated and acted on. We can't wait for eScribe where we could just pop back to February and have that agenda just pop up like magic. But anyway, Dave, you okay? That's it.
The only reason I'm asking is there was supposed to be a vote on whether or not the Nelson Regional Sports Council would be maintaining a seat, whether it be in perpetuity or for the upcoming year, and it was scheduled for this meeting here today, but it didn't make the agenda and it's not on the action item any longer.
So we'll get an update on regional council on the
I could be at the next meeting.
at the next meeting. Okay, Johnny, that just will. Great, thank you, thanks. We'll get an update in May. All righty, folks. Oh, I see a hand. Yes, go ahead, Cheryl, please. Director Graham.
So thank you. So through the chair, and I know you just mentioned this and I mention it every meeting, so I'm going to mention it again, which would be, are we going to get this meeting onto eScribe through the chair to staff?
Yeah, Joe, can we have an update on that?
Next meeting. Sorry, through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Jenna.
Next meeting will be through eScribe. They were just setting up the final template.
Yay. That's an internal yay for us. Rah, rah. Thanks, Jenna. Okay, and thanks for asking that. Now we leave on such a happy note. All right, I don't see anything else, so can I have a motion to adjourn? It's moved and seconded, and all in favor, and it passes. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you in May, and I'm sure we'll see many of you way before that. Thanks, David.
Thank you.